Good evening, hunters. Ervin here to bring you my maximum DPS sword and shield build for Monster Hunter Wilds. The tried and true all rounder of the series has more right ways than wrong to build. Some players like to heal their allies with wide range, some like to stack lifesteal and never card again. But this build is focused on one thing and one thing only: insane, reliable DPS potential. First, let's talk about the weapon. Unsurprisingly, we want to use the Vertoloto Artian weapon. Ideally, you want to craft your Artian with 3 attack parts. And for our reinforcement bonus, we're looking to get ideally 1 to 2 sharpness rolls with 3 to 4 attack rolls. Affinity is always worse than raw attack in all cases here. We do not want to sacrifice any attack in favor of it on our weapon. It's not the end of the world if your reinforcement rolls aren't perfect, though. It makes up a very small sum of our total at the end of the day. White sharpness is also one of the biggest increases to DPS in the entire game compared to sitting in the blue, so a couple of sharpness lines goes a long way to ensuring its uptime. But what about element? Well, this is a tricky question to answer. This is because elemental damage is not influenced by the motion value of your attacks and adds flat amounts of damage to each strike, regardless of how heavy or light they may be. Ordinarily, weapons lean towards either being fundamentally fast or slow. Obviously, great swords should be built raw, and dual blades built element as an obvious example. But Sword and Shield sits in the middle, being neither particularly fast or slow and heavy hitting, only shifting slightly towards either spectrum depending on the combo utilized. This in turn means that Sword and Shield plays best raw when playing for Spinning Reaper, Charged Chop, and Perfect Rush, and better with Element when using its Chop combo or Mixed combo as a bread and butter. So if you prefer the feel of the lighter moveset, you'll want to build a Dragon Artian weapon and play for Element. If you prefer playing the slower, heavier hitting part of the moveset primarily, you want to build a Blast Artian for a bit of extra DPS, or a Paralysis Artian for a couple extra crowd control based DPS windows per fight, with Blast being the more reliable option and Paralysis being more volatile in usefulness. And I say to use Dragon Element because currently Dragon has the widest range of effectiveness against the currently available monsters. But if you want it to be optimal in the future as new monsters release or when fighting a specific monster, then you'd always favor the element it was the weakest to. Not everyone wants to craft that many Artians though, so a single Dragon Element Vertoloto will do just fine on its own unless you plan to contest speedrun records. That was already a lot to take in, but things will be a lot more straightforward from here on out. For your weapon decorations, we go with a Critical Jewel 3 for 3 out of 5 crit boost, giving us a mandatory increase in critical damage from a 25% bonus up to a 34% bonus. The other two will depend on if you're playing elemental or raw damage. If you've chosen to build an elemental Artian, then Guardian slash Dragon Jewel and a Razor Sharp slash Dragon Jewel will be your go to choices. Guardian grants us 3 out of 3 offensive guard, granting us a rarely available percent increase to our total attack value of 15% for 12 seconds following any semi perfect guards. I say semi perfect because the timing to activate offensive guard is actually very forgiving, and with Sword and Shield's ability to cancel the ending lag on any attacks it throws out with a guard, this bonus will be active for large portions of the fight, assuming you can hit your guard timings. For those that can, offensive guard is going to be providing a lot more attack than even a 5 out of 5 attack boost could. Razor Sharp gives us a 50% chance to not lose sharpness, and as we talked about, maintaining white sharpness is key to maximizing DPS, and the faster attack patterns on Sword and Shield burn through the sharpness too quickly to go without this decoration. The extra points granted by these two jewels give us 2 out of 3 Dragon Boost for a decent chunk of additional elemental damage. If you decided to run with the Blast or Paralysis Fertoloto, however, run Guardian slash Handicraft and a Mastery Jewel instead, trading out the extra elemental damage for even more sharpness sustained through the Handicraft's 10 extra white sharpness, and Master's Touch, which grants more consistent sharpness loss prevention than Razor Sharp by a small margin thanks to our high affinity. Now, if you don't have an Artian weapon to your name yet, however, run the Jaeger Ankh instead as a substitute. Ideally socketed with a Guardian slash Dragon Jewel as well as a Critical Jewel 1 and 2. Your sharpness won't be sustaining nearly as well as an Artian weapon would, but the damage will be very comparable until you can get one up and running. Finally, getting into the armor, we're running the G Ebony Helmet Beta, a fantastic value piece providing us with 2 out of 5 burst. Burst is the most consistent DPS increase in Monster Hunter Wilds. At 5 out of 5 burst, we're going to be getting 18 extra raw attack and 140 element bonus with near perfect uptime, thanks to the only requirement for its activation being to hit the monster. There is a decent argument to stack Agitator over Burst, but due to the difference in uptime, Burst is by far more consistently beneficial, especially when playing an elemental weapon. This helmet also gives us a level 2 decoration slot, which we use for our first Mighty Jewel for 1 out of 3 maximum might. A crucial and powerful skill worth 30% affinity at max rank with a very high uptime, only briefly canceled out after dodging or blocking an attack, with perfect uptime during any significant damage window opportunities provided throughout the fight. There is an argument to utilize two pieces of Fulgur for its extra stamina bar to ensure perfect uptime for this passive, but in my experience, I have not found this to be worthwhile. Overall, our helmet provides 3 points towards some of the most impactful passives in the game, though. Our chest piece is the Arc Vulcan Male Beta, giving us a 1 out of 5 weakness exploit, the most consistently useful and active passive, arguably in all of Monster Hunter Wilds, giving us a large chunk of extra affinity at all times, and getting us up to 100% affinity when striking open wounds at max rank. We also get yet another level 2 decoration and level 3 decoration slot, which we'll be spending on a Chain Jewel and second Mighty Jewel, getting us up to 3 out of 5 burst and 2 out of 5 maximum might, creating yet another extremely high value piece of gear. For gloves, we're using the G Ebony Bracers Alpha, a pretty cut and dry piece of gear with no decoration slots that gets us up to our sought after 5 out of 5 burst, and activates the Ebony Odogaron's power set bonus for Burst Boost 1, giving us an extra 3 raw attack anytime burst is active, which is basically all the time. The extra Divine Blessing level we picked up from this piece also isn't bad either, giving us a bit of extra defense that we really lack otherwise. For the waist and leg piece, we take the Gore Coil and Gore Greaves Beta. Individually, pretty awful gear pieces, only giving us Constitution 2 for some widely unnecessary and unhelpful stamina cost reduction, one level of antivirus, which is very relevant, although low in value for a gear piece passive, and an equally low value level of flinch free that does at least shrug off most light attacks from other hunters, assuming no one is running shock absorption. The jewel sockets are at least decent, giving us two more level 3 sockets that we spend getting 3 out of 5 weakness exploit with tenderizer jewels, a level 2 socket we use for our last mighty jewel to achieve 3 out of 3 maximum might, and two level 1 sockets that we spend on sane jewels for 3 out of 3 antivirus. We do this because wearing two pieces of gore gives us the two-piece set bonus for Gore Magala's Tyranny called Black Eclipse, by far the most powerful set bonus in the game. Black Eclipse causes your hunter to be afflicted with the Frenzy status ailment upon entering combat with a large monster. Frenzy starts a timer. If you fail to inflict a sufficient number of hits within the time limit, you'll have all damage against you amplified until you manage to clear the status or it runs out. If we do manage to get enough consecutive hits before becoming fully infected, you'll clear the status and instead gain an affinity buff for 1 full minute. As soon as that 1 minute ends, you'll immediately be inflicted with Frenzy again, giving us the ability to keep this affinity buff up almost indefinitely. With 3 out of 3 antivirus, not only do we cleanse the Frenzy status much faster, but our total affinity bonus from cleansing the Frenzy becomes a whopping 25%, getting us up to an extremely consistent 65% affinity and 85% affinity against any open wounds. There's no set bonus in the game quite as strong as this otherwise, besides simply going for 4-piece gore for the additional raw attack it grants. So even though the gore pieces themselves are lackluster, this set bonus is more than worth that investment. And then we cap things off with an Exploiter Charm 3 as our talisman to get us that sweet, sweet 5 out of 5 weakness exploit bonus. Altogether, we end up with 65% reliable affinity, 21 extra raw attack, 15% more attack while our offensive guard remains active, as it should more often than not, creating a set capable of some of the quickest kill times for the toughest monsters in the game, with very consistent and reliable damage that fluctuates very little throughout the fight based on elements that you are in complete control over compared to using Agitator. That's going to do it for this build, but if you'd like a quick and easy to understand text-based version of this guide that you'd like to reference as you put this set together, or you want to keep up to date with any changes that I might make in the future, I've uploaded an in-depth text-based version of this guide to Mobalytics that I'll be leaving a link to down below in the description and pinned comment for your convenience. For example, the Corrupted Mantle is set to be nerfed during the title update, so I'll be updating the text based guide based on how those changes play out. If you've made it this far, thanks for watching. If there's another weapon or build that you'd like to see me cover in the future, feel free to let me know in the comments below. Thank you to my coffee supporters who help keep the channel going, and happy hunting, everyone.